to We're All Fine. As ever, I am your host, Holly, and with me is my gorgeous and funny co-host, Carly. Hi, Carly.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Holly. That was really nice.
Well, I feel like you should know at least once a day that you're beautiful and funny. So, but now I'm not going to text it to you. I was going to text it, but now you don't get that. You get it in person. You're welcome.
Well, you could just write letters. I don't know why we're bringing it down. We could just amp it up. It's fine. It's fine.
We are very excited today. We have a very special guest who was with us last season, and she is just so smart and brings such good stuff to the table. Last season, it was helping us deal with failure, which I don't know about the rest of you, but that was very helpful for my 2024. So thanks, Jenny. Here with us today is Jenny Maloney. Yay!
Yay, everyone! I'm super excited to be here.
Jenny is an author, an actress, a director, and just an all-around amazing human. And you're here to talk to us a little bit today about serial killers.
Kind of life lessons from serial killers. Yes.
Right. Well, I just want to say before we get into this, for our listeners, I just want to do a blanket statement overall. We are going to be talking about some interesting but delicate subjects today. And as per the show, we like to keep things a little lighthearted because, quite frankly, the world is already on fire and I have no interest in adding to that. You, Carly?
Yeah, no, I don't actually know how to use a fire extinguisher, so I'm going to just keep the flame making process to a minimum. Just a minimum.
So we want you guys to know that as we talk about these heinous crimes in a little bit lighter way, we do recognize that these are very serious crimes and that there were victims involved, and that always, always, always it's important to remember the people who were hurt and the lasting just pain that it causes for those who were affected. We do know that. But again, with 2025 showing up and, the possibility of us annexing Canada, I don't know. I think that we should probably take a moment to just kind of laugh about the absurdity of the world that we're living in.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
I think so. Well, and that's the thing is I think a lot of times people fall into the idea of the serial killer worship or the outlaw worship, right? Women have tattoos of Ted Bundy's teeth marks on their bodies. And it's actually it's actually a pretty popular one. There are most serial killers end up having hundreds of letters a day in the beginning of once they've been caught and once they're in the prisons, to the point where extra staff members are usually have to brought on to go through all of the mail. And a lot of times it's people saying I think I'm in love with you, or you're so beautiful. And I just want to make it clear, that is not what this is. If you're a serial killer, you're fucked up. Okay. You're fucked up. You did bad things. And I probably,
and if you're doing it right now, you should stop it. It's bad.
You should stop it. You should stop it, and you should be sorry. Okay, you should be sorry. At no time are we sitting here fuck yeah, serial killers. Wow. That's not what we're doing. But there is this interesting thing where, especially in media, we always take the human aspect out, whether to make it more palatable, to be able to share the stories of the victims, or because it's salacious and it's interesting. And so if we make this person seem less like a person and more like this entity that drives people's interest, that's what we're gonna do. And thinking of them as humans and the life lessons from them, or the weird quirks they had, or just the weird things, I think that's what our focus is today, is that they're still superhuman, but they're not superhumans.
Right.
Oh.
I really like that.
Thanks,
I will say, so the reason that I thought that when you pitched this idea that it was such a good idea is, so I have a degree in criminal justice with an emphasis in investigations, and I'm two credits away from like another degree in criminology and psychology, I switched to creative writing so that I could do other things.
Look at you, such a badass.
But one of the interesting things that I learned while studying quote unquote abnormal psychology is just that is psychology taken to the nth degree. So it still helped me learn to navigate regular neurotypical engagements. So I think that you can use these examples as actually legitimate examples for ways to live a healthier life when you look at how it's taken to an extreme. So that's kind of the angle that I'm interested in.
Love that angle.
Tell us more, Yoda.
Yeah, your brain is super cool.
Mostly I figured that we could just explore it with questions or information that you guys brought up. So I don't have like an effective TED Talk prepared for this. Holly and I were involved in a play many moons ago called Gideon's Knot. It's by Jonna Adams, and it is basically a parent-teacher confrontation about a 10-year-old's suicide. And as part of the research and process for this play, Holly, me, and our director, Jody Paparoth, we attended a suicide mental health intervention workshop. And in this workshop, the leader is talking about working for the National Suicide Hotline, and that kind of got us thinking about hotlines and people who use them. And one of the, I guess, fun facts, quote, is that Ted Bundy worked for a rape counseling crisis line with Anne Rule, who wrote a book about it called The Stranger Beside Me. And so I think Holly's question is going towards how does not only a murderer, but Ted Bundy was a prolific rapist, work for a counseling hotline? What is that dichotomy? How can you do so much damage at one point, but he might have accidentally been helping maybe even some of the same women in the same turn? I personally think that Ted Bundy was not any kind of saint. I don't think that he was working this hotline because, he felt great about helping women. I think it was just another way for him to exert power and control and to also understand how women's minds are working. So in some ways, I think he was just doing research for his own benefit. So in some ways, it's not that dichotomous. He's a bad guy and he was doing good things for a bad purpose.
He just knows how to do his homework.
Exactly. Which is a life lesson we can learn from serial killers.
Right.
So number one. Do your homework.
Do your homework. Do your research. Know the subject matter that you're passionate about. But please don't be a rapist or a murderer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the asterisk that's at the end of every single one of our things today. We're just going to beep, asterisk. So, great. So do your research. Have there been other instances of killers, prolific killers, who have been helpful as well as horrible?
I mean, not everyone. I mean, I'm sure there is. Am I blanking right now? Absolutely. Because my other example is Ted Bundy saving a young boy from drowning. Many years later, he kills two women in the same lake that he saved this child in. So Ted Bundy is like an interesting example through that. But at the end of the day, I just don't think that people can be entirely bad their whole entire lives, even by accident. They didn't run over the old lady in the crosswalk,
Well, there's a lot of studies right now when they talk about nature versus nurture. Mm-hmm. And sure, it could even be like a gene that gets activated, right? Like when you think about things, they're saying like schizophrenia, even alcoholism, like these are genes that reside there and at some point can get activated, which is terrifying to think that there's like a killer gene.
A button that you can push that will... I mean, I will say that I think in the cases of serial killers in particular, it's a lot of buttons being pushed. So if you think about, I think we've all been to therapy here, right? So just think about, I don't know, a pretty mild therapy session. There's probably a lot of trauma and issues that come up, and you feel kind of weird and wonky the rest of the day, maybe for the rest of the week, because something came up. But a lot of times our concerns are about work or our romantic relationships. Serial killers will do the same thing, but their trauma and their trauma responses are so off the charts that I don't think any therapist could really talk them out of it. So Edmund Kemper, for example, he's the co-ed killer. He killed, I think, 8 women in California, and he is an incredibly articulate serial killer. You can go find him on YouTube. You can listen to him talk, because he will monologue all day long and tell you about the trauma that he's had and lived through, and the things that his mom did to him, and how his dad abandoned him. And then he just killed his grandparents because, damn, that's a lot of trauma. So it's interesting, because he himself learned to manipulate a lot of psychologists by using that psychological speech, that therapy speech. So in some ways, he was just too smart for therapy.
I have heard so many white dudes say that exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're too smart.
They're too smart for therapy.
I'm too smart for therapy. I've got
through...
friends. That's the other one too. I've got friends. Why am I going to pay someone to be my friend? And it's like, no, that's actually like the exact fucking opposite. Like, you don't get it. You don't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's okay. It's okay. Like, me and my therapist are not friends, and that's the best thing about it. I get to sit on that couch and be like, hey, here's the thing, I don't give a fuck if you like me. Like, this is not my best self. You're welcome. Like,
But to hear like Kemper talk, it's kind of crazy, because he sounds so self-actualized. He'll tell you exactly why he killed a person. Oh, and another interesting thing about Kemper that I think Holly will find very interesting, considering what she does now, is that Ed Kemper is also an audiobook narrator.
Shut up.
If you listen to audiobooks in the 1980s, odds are at least one of them was probably read by Kemper.
That editing process had to be just terrible.
I'm not going to lie on that. Like, that makes a lot of sense. As I've gotten into this, like, I spend a lot of time alone pretending to be multiple people into a microphone.
See?
And then just listening to myself a lot as I edit. So, like, I get it. It's a perfect echo chamber of nonsense.
Wonderful. See?
Here's the thing. I support you. If the cops asked me where you were, she was with me. What were you doing? Stuff. Like, I'm with you the whole time. Like, alibi, done. I don't know if I can help you hide a body. I don't have, like, any upper arm strength. Like, I've got none. Like, they're just,
right.
These are noodles, But
I'm just hoping audiobook recording is not one of the buttons. Like, I don't want...
Who are we looking for, Holly?
Because when I think about, like, some of the things that you see and growing up for a lot of these people, I'm like, we go, okay, if there are buttons, how many people share these buttons? A difficult relationship with your mother. Button.
We're all really serial killers.
Yeah. Difficulty with dating. Button. I just, even as you're talking about this guy who, like, sounds very self-actualized and will monologue forever about the pain that he's been in, do you know how many friends have described a Tinder date in the exact same way?
Oh, I don't have statistics, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe it's just the people that I'm around, but like, these poor people have ended up on dates that do the exact same thing. So, button. I mean, there's just so many different buttons, like things that they like where I go, I like that too.
I also enjoy chocolate ice cream. Like, that's not...
Yeah. Well, and Carly, I know you have a whole list of this, so I'm kind of linking in here. But I saw Ed Gein had seen, there was like a scene in Taxi Driver where the character asked for a cup of coffee and a slice of apple pie with cheese on it. And then he asked for the exact same thing as his last meal. Now, I know that's like a Southern specialty, but to me, I'm like, only a monster would order apple pie with cheese on it. Like, that seems like a very clear indication something was wrong. Like, someone needed to check that. But I don't know. If you're an apple pie and cheese person, button. I don't know.
Gross. I think that probably is a button. But, like, we'll get more into heavy stuff, but I do think this is kind of interesting. Because learning life lessons from serial killers, but then also looking at them as humans. I follow a page, I don't remember it, on Instagram, where a guy rates last meals that people had. And I think that's really interesting. Probably, like, not a hobby I'm going to pick up. But, you know, a woman's take, you know? But no, I'm not going to do it. There's also the Serial Killer Cookbook written by Ashley Lecker. The description of the book is true crime trivia and disturbingly delicious last meals from death row's most infamous killers and murderers. And I just think that's interesting.
Who does this? Like, I'm not going to lie. That sounds like a fascinating book. Do I want it in my home? Maybe. Would I brag about it? Probably not. But who is the person?
Would I secretly cook it for Christmas dinner? Yes, I would.
Yes, I would. But who is the person that's just sitting around and they're like, oh, guys, I have the best idea. Last meal cookbook. Anyone? Like, I promise you, Paula Deen at no point was like, guys, I've got this great idea for our next cookbook. Who does this?
Well, no, because she doesn't, like, cook like that. She just cooks with, like, racism and butter. You know, like, Paula was busy. Paula was busy. But here are some of the most interesting last meals that I found. Eileen Wuornos, which I'm sure a lot of us know, she was a serial killer. She murdered 7 men in Florida. Her last meal was a cup of black coffee, was all she requested.
That tracks.
Just a cup of black coffee. That's all she wanted. That's all she was interested in.
That's the saddest thing I think I've ever heard.
Oh, there was one...
Eileen Wuornos is pretty much the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Oh my God. So sad. Another man, Frederick Karl Fritz Harman. He was a famous German serial killer who terrorized the city of Hanover from 1918 to 1924. He had a total of 24 victims. He was called the Butcher of Hanover, and his last meal was a cup of Brazilian coffee, black, and a cigar was all he wanted. And then we'll go to one man, I don't remember his name, wanted 1 pitted olive.
Some of these are like kind of douchey requests.
Oh,
so a lot of states, actually, I learned through this research, now do not offer last meals anymore because there was a trend for a while where people would ask for hundreds of dollars worth of food and then refuse to touch it. So now you get
power move.
Yep. So like, and they would have them going to Pizza Hut, Domino's, McDonald's, like all over because whatever was requested for the last meal was going to be accepted. But then like Jenny said, as the last power move, they wouldn't touch any of it. So now a lot of states only give you the option of what Ted Bundy had, which is steak, eggs, toast, and black coffee. So Ted Bundy did not request a last meal. He received the traditional meal, which is now what's kind of commonplace. So steak, eggs, toast, milk, juice, coffee, and hash browns. And Ted Bundy also did not take a bite of the meal. There was another one, Timothy McVeigh, and his last meal was 2 pints of mint ice cream.
Okay, that's a button. Damn it.
I was about to say, uh-oh.
Mint ice cream is my jam.
I don't know. I'm not like a huge ice cream kid. I got my tonsils taken out in like 3rd grade, and all I could eat because it was my adenoids too, was like all the soft cold shit. So like Jell-O, ice cream. Yeah. Even still to this day, I have to be like craving it. And it's only Baskin Robbins. That's like the only ice cream that like I really get down.
I mean,
on.
that is the best one, but I do want to note that poor Holly has a lot of button like tally marks right now. Audiobook narrator, mint chocolate chip eater.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
I fear for my husband. Like I really I also am applauding myself for every time I've gotten mad and haven't killed people. Like this actually feels like a prideful moment for me.
You know what? I think you should. I think you should embrace that. I think it's a win anytime that you don't kill people. And serial killers who might be listening, remember that It is a win if you do not kill people. Just put that little tally mark in there and feel better about yourself and move forward.
Take pride in your self-control. I just
Yes.
tell myself all the time, I don't look good in orange. Like that's that right there helps me immensely. No one looks good in orange.
No.
We're on the topic of your buttons. What is your zodiac? What's your astrological signs?
Oh, well, I'm an Aries.
Oh, good
And
news.
a monkey as well in the Chinese. So I'm basically like a baby on crack.
I love that. Well, good news is, because I wanted to look at this too, like looking at people as people, like what would I have in common with this serial killer? Because I like to think not much,
Yeah.
I like to think not much. So I wanted to figure out like common things with all of them. And come to find out,
I don't like where this is going. I don't like where this. I already know where it's going, and I know what my zodiac sign is, and I don't want to.
Jenny's so afraid.
So, Holly, you don't have to tick this box because you're an Aries. So, Taurus, Aries, and Gemini are some of the lowest.
Oh, yay! I don't have a button. I thought that was the opposite.
No, so there are 4 signs tied equal with number of serial killers.
Okay, everyone start thinking about your best friends right now.
Right, be careful. Well, I'm worried. I got one of these in my house. Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, and Sagittarius are the 4 most common signs amongst serial killers. The least
Do you know how
common,
many Pisces I know? Do you know how many are in my house?
I have to raise a Sagittarius who is headstrong. And I tell you what, for years I've been saying, well, if I can survive raising her, she'll change the world. And now I'm worried. Now that's not cute anymore.
Honestly, Carly, I mean, she could still change the world. It doesn't sound like you had like a lot of clarification with that statement. So
True.
you may have manifested truth. I mean, just heads up.
Well, and she's so, I don't know, she's so damn smart too. That's the thing. She could murder people, live in my house, and I'd be one of those airheads on the news like, there were never any signs. I had no idea.
Because Carly, you're Aries too, right?
I'm Aries Taurus. I am a cusp baby, which from my research, there are like 0 cusp baby serial killers. So here I am, at least not like in any of the references I saw. So that makes me feel really nice that I don't have a lot of the ticks. Antisocial behavior, yeah. Got that one. Pretty big. Right on top. Reclusiveness. Got that one. Glib was another one that like they'll have serial killers are known to be like a little like sometimes. And it's not because I think I'm better than anybody. It's just I'm like, ugh, I don't have the effort. So I have that one too. Number 3.
Yeah, but that goes against what we've just learned about doing your homework and research. If you're just too lazy to have a reaction, I think you're safe.
Yeah, I think that's true. Actually, what I find really interesting is the idea of no one saw it coming. He was so quiet. You live next door. And I was like, no. Like, you can see these guys coming almost miles away if you stop to think about it. At the end of the day, this is how catching serial killers works. You're going to find the guy that was the most annoying in high school, maybe the one who was just a real oddball, got too close, personal space, that kind of thing. So think about the loser in high school getting caught by a guy who looks like an accountant, because that is what serial killer hunters look like. They're just, they spend a lot of time at computers and wearing glasses, and like, just watch any true crime show and tell me that these serial killer hunters, these FBI profilers who get all sexified on TV, don't look like accountants. A great show for this is The Night Stalker on Netflix, and it's a 3-part miniseries. Mm-hmm. And basically, I'm like, this is very typical right here. You got Richard Ramirez, who absolutely looks like the loser that you knew in high school, and then look at the guys who caught them. They're very professional, accountant-looking creatures. So it is.
That's super true.
Yeah.
Every time you say that, I just have the image of like Tom Hanks and Catch Me If You Can with the giant, like 1960s black rim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. No, that's
See,
super true.
But Carly and I were talking about this a little bit off mic. When we're talking about profilers, I just learned from that awesome documentary that one of the people who developed profiling was a woman. Who was just she doesn't really care so much about recognition and media because she's like, I'm busy. Like there's more to do. So she's not as well known.
Well, she was also a researcher.
Dr. Ann Burgess.
You know, the thing about Dr. Burgess is that here was this woman who was looking at literally these crimes from the human perspective, which is really how this started. And I find that fascinating, which here was this woman who was a nurse, a psychologist, like talking to people and really victims and learning a lot about the aggressors from the victims. And then from there, like looking at the victims from like that human perspective.
Right.
That's amazing to me. Of course the woman would do that.
No, yeah. And she was really central in developing the psychological test, the survey that they put together for the original research. The sample for that is really small. Like it's cited quite a bit, and some of the elements have been debunked a little bit. Like they talk about the criminal triad, which is wetting the bed, cruelty to animals, and setting fires. But a lot of the research that they've done has shown not to be quite as statistically significant. Oh, another thing that we can learn about life from serial killers is that family life is hard, because one of the things that has been debunked is that they say serial killers only stop if they're killed or if they're in jail. Right? Well, there's a third element to that, and it's if you have a family. So if you get married and have a kid, you don't really have time to go out serial killing.
I mean, I stopped going out to the clubs and doing, the bars. I used to karaoke like a fiend.
Exactly.
So I get it. There's no time for the things you enjoy. And if the things you enjoy are killing people, like it's
going to be hard.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah, so the Golden State Killer, who was just caught using genealogy DNA, which is a really, really fascinating thing, forensics genealogy, but I won't get into that. But he had raped, I think, something like 45 women across California. He'd killed 10 more couples, and the reason that he stopped was he got married, and then he had 2 kids, and then he was just raising them. And that's what he did until they caught him at 70 plus years old. Was
that the same thing that happened with BTK? Because I know that there was a huge stretch that he didn't, and it was because he had kids, right?
And it's because he had kids. Yeah, he had, so he started off, and then there's this big gap, and then, later on. So it does talk about, I think he had 2 kids. So there's his daughter wrote a book, like called The Daughter of a Serial Killer. So it's pretty straightforward. But she talks about what a normal guy her dad was. He was a scout leader. Interestingly enough, he did take the kids on a scouting trip and ditched them halfway through to go kill someone and then came back. So I guess you can use kids as cover too.
But is that his version of a smoke break? What
I know, yeah, exactly. So families are work. This is lesson number 2. Do your research, and families are a lot of work, so you really need to be dedicated to them.
Well, I mean, honestly, that makes just so much sense.
Right? I mean, it does. Yeah, kids are watching everything, so they're like built-in little witnesses too, so it's not like you can move much. You can barely go to the bathroom, right? Like, kids will just be knocking on your door, especially toddlers. Why aren't you in my sight 24 hours a day, Mom or Dad?
Oh, yeah, no. I haven't peed alone in 8 years.
Exactly. And I guess that the world is a safer place for it, Carly, considering your antisocial inclination. You haven't killed a single person in 8 years.
Nope. And here's the thing. My anxiety, I think, even heavily medicated. I'm up here. I went to Costco the other day. And I was like, this is it. This is how I go. You would have thought I was on the battlefield, fighting for my country. I was just no, I don't want to go down the olive aisle. Like, there's no way I could ever murder. There's no way.
Okay, but
Nope.
you can't use that as an example because going into a Costco literally is like going into battle. That place
Right.
is terrifying. If you hit that on a Saturday, good luck to you. You use the cart as a shield. Like, that's the whole purpose to pick one up in the beginning.
Literally the whole purpose. Oh, no. I'm not a fan. But I will say the samples were good that day. A lot of vegetarian options. But, like, I know that I could never be a serial killer because in this moment of, like, sheer panic and I hate everyone around me and I'm trapped in this box, not one time did I think that, like, homicide was the way out. I was like, I should just hide until everyone leaves and the lights turn off. Like, I should just lay down. I'm going to sit right here on the 10,000 pounds of ketchup. Like, So I don't know. I don't think I'd get any joy. You know, it's like the whole, like, that interior design lady that was like, put it in your hand. Does it give you joy? The idea of, like, murder seems so, and then doing it over and over again, like the mess and the preparation. And
It really does seem like a lot of work.
No
Yeah.
joy.
I read something that, gosh, maybe it was Bundy, that when they found him, was it Bundy, that there were so many bodies in his house? Maybe I'm not thinking of the right one. Dahmer? That he'd had to put one in his tub and, like, he had been showering over the body because he was just too tired.
I mean, that sounds very Dahmer-esque, but Dahmer was also, he liked to collect them because he was a very lonely man. So he kept the bodies more because he needed a friend than for any other reason. Dahmer was a very disturbing creature.
When I heard this about, like, he kept a body in there and just never moved it because he just didn't, like, all I could think about were the piles of laundry I still haven't put away. They just sit there. They sit there. And maybe I'm looking at them as, like, company in my house and, like, it makes me feel less alone, but it's just something that, like, sits there and I work around it and work over it. Maybe bodies were like Dahmer's laundry. Maybe he should have just, like, learned some social skills and made friends that might have helped him a little bit more.
But so here's I actually do have a question about that, though, from your perspective. So it said that Dahmer had a 14-year-old that escaped from him and was able to get to a police officer. Dahmer was able to convince the police officer to give the 14-year-old back to him.
Yes.
So if you can be that persuasive, like, how is it that you could be so, I don't want to say charismatic because that feels icky, but yet have such a hard time making relationships with people? Like, his neighbor knew of him, spoke to him off and on. Like, he had people around him that said that he was very well spoken. But then also, like, how can you convince, and I guess onlookers were telling the cop, like, do not give this man this child, and the cop still did it. So how can you do that, but then have, like, no social skill?
So I think that speaks more to how society works than how necessarily convincing Dahmer was. Because if you stop to think about it, these both lived in the same building, I believed, and actually he'd hurt his brother too. So Dahmer had a relationship with this family. They lived in the same neighborhood. He's basically saying, hey, I'm watching this kid, and you have to take into consideration the environment as well. So if it's in a rougher neighborhood of Chicago, let's say, and you're a cop who's dealing with bullshit every day, and this adult male comes over and says, hey, I'm taking care of him, he was freaking out, I'll just take him back, everything will be fine, it'll be calm. So in some ways, we're not designed to believe that people are capable of such horrible, horrible things. It's really just kind of beyond our comprehension. So in some ways, when people are saying, oh, I didn't believe that he could do that, it's partly because you don't believe anyone could do something like that. It's so far beyond your normal frame of reference. And serial killers are really rare. Like, we're talking about a really rare subset of people. And so if you're a cop, you're in that environment. The onlookers are the ones who live in that environment and who spend time in that environment are the ones being like, yo, that's not right. Because they sense something is off because they live in that space. The police officer doesn't live in that space. They work in that space, which gives you a different relationship to that space.
That actually makes way more sense. That makes way more sense.
So,
too, charismatic is a really apt word because charismatic suggests influence. So, I mean, you were really on that, Carly. Like that's for a lot of these, charismatic it's not just charming. It's being able to exert influence for better or worse.
Yeah, and charisma can be learned. It's something that's, it's like anything else. So Ed Kemper, for example. Ed Kemper is 6'9", I think. He's like 300 pounds. He's a big guy, right? And he learned early on that when he was asking these hitchhikers to get into his car, that he should not get out of the car, because if he gets out of the car and you're talking to, I'm 5'5", if some 6'9", 300-pound guy is like, hey, you want to ride? I'm not going to say yes, right? Because he's a big, scary guy, right? So he learned to stay in the car. He would look at his watch when he offered them a ride, like he didn't care what their answer was. So if he's sort of ignoring them and, I don't know, treating them a little bit like trash, they're like, oh, well, he doesn't care about me, so therefore it's safe enough to get the ride. He's harmless enough. He's just a dude who's on his way to a place and is being nice for a second. And then they get in the car and they realize that, like, the lock's been jimmied with, they can't open the door, and oh no, they're stuck, right? So he would actually practice how to do this, how to get people to trust him. And have you ever seen the movie The Vanishing, the Kiefer Sutherland, Sandra Bullock movie?
Oh,
so you know how Bridges' character is like taking notes about like, here's how long the chloroform takes. Here's where I will get it. That's him learning and practicing. And so you can kind of gauge your environment. These people they're hunters, they're predators, they're practicing, and their hunting looks a little bit differently. It is something that you put effort. And again, it's so far beyond our comprehension that someone would, because Kemper, I think he picked up lots and lots of hitchhikers, but he only, quote unquote, only killed like 7. So there's that. Charisma is something that can be practiced. Your methodology is something to be practiced. How you can approach people is something to be practiced. And that's something that we learn too, just as regular humans, right? We learn things like power poses before a job interview. We learn how to slate for theater. We learn how to present ourselves in a way that is appealing to the outside world. They're learning the same thing. Their motives at the end of the day are much different than ours.
It's just very interesting to me that a lot of the things that you are talking about, Jenny, I've heard in so many of the sales conferences and meetings and trainings that I see my husband go through. And because, they do a lot of in-home sales. And so a lot of that is presenting yourself as non-threatening, whether you're selling a vacuum or windows or whatever, like there's a whole methodology to it to make sure that you're presenting yourself in the best light and to influence your person to, in a positive way, see the value of what you're bringing. But it's more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's influencing them to open up their wallet for this thing that they may not have needed like an hour ago. Right.
Mm-hmm. And the serial killer is just trying to get you a little bit closer so they can strangle you. I think that you should buy the vacuum, but
woof. Woof. So with all of these, I think, do you know what like general education is for a lot of these people? Because I'm kind of curious. Like I think about, we joke about like doing your homework and that kind of thing and the way that they study people and human behavior, but what does that look like in school. Maybe it's just my background as a teacher wanting to know what that student would look like.
Oh, that's interesting.
In my class.
Well, I think you probably wouldn't see that student very long. Sorry, my dogs are very excited back here. A lot of these they'll drop out from high school or college. Ted Bundy went to law school. He's an exception. I think probably one of the higher educated ones. Kemper, for example, his mom worked for a college. She worked for the University of California at Santa Cruz. So some of them have experience, but I think this is probably where I'm more like a serial killer. I think they're more excited to learn about subjects that they are interested in rather than school itself.
But I'm realizing the way that you're saying this is that like serial killer education, that's another button for you. Is the like study what you love. So this is another button for you.
Yeah, it is. It's a probably disturbing button.
Oh, yeah. No, when you were like, oh, they'll only want to learn about what they want to learn about and they'll skip all the other classes. That was literally my high school experience.
Right.
I was like, fuck all this. I'm just going to go hang out at the theater. I would literally wake up at noon some days just to get to my sixth period because I was like, I don't need any of these things. I'll just do what I want to do.
Right. I do think that valedictorians are probably not serial killers. I'm sure someone can Google that and find at least one exception where that's incorrect. Or maybe they're just really good serial killers and haven't been caught yet.
Because they did their homework. And they probably have like loving, supportive families, you know? Like.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Well, I think maybe, study is sort of like having kids. There's just no time. Like if you're going to be a valedictorian, you're taking AP classes. Like, are you kidding me?
Right.
You're lucky enough to get sleep. How are you going to get study and go kill someone? Like, there's no time for that.
Right. I mean, odds are on top of that, because the valedictorians who get like the big scholarships and stuff are probably doing at least one sport and 2 or 3 extracurriculars on top of it. And then maybe some of them work. So I don't know. I think those high achieving high schoolers are probably some of the busiest human beings on the planet.
Oh my
I
God,
don't get enough credit for that.
Maybe they're
100%.
just too tired to do bad things.
Right.
Like,
well, I mean, isn't that the idle hands are the devil's workshop? So, I mean, if you don't want to be a serial killer, stay busy.
Yeah, I remember asking some parents of older dancers in the dance studio. They had 2 girls, and I was like, wow, your girls have been in dance for so long, and that's so expensive. Why do you do it? And they looked at me totally in the eye, just calm as can be, and said, it's cheaper than a grandchild.
Genius.
Touche, all right. Because the whole purpose was if they're too busy to date around, sleep around, whatever. I mean, they would love to have a boyfriend, but they have to be with a boyfriend who's cool with not seeing them very often.
Right.
I get it. Yeah. Just like, why do you pay so much for dance? To keep my kids from being serial killers.
I mean, I think that's a good goal. I think you're doing society a favor.
Yeah.
So way to be part of the team.
You're doing great.
Look at this. This is a life lesson that's just kind of off of this. Keep busy, and then there's no time.
That might be the ultimate lesson that we're learning today.
Well, and if that's the case, guys, I feel like all 3 of us are going to be totally safe.
Yeah.
Because every single person here manages to fill up their time so many different ways. So often. There's literally, we can't. So it doesn't matter if we like mint ice cream. I guess all of our birthdays are safe. So we're good on that.
Carly, in your research, did you do an exploration of Enneagram types or Holly's eyes are so huge right now, guys.
Why? What? I don't want to know these things.
But you do. Knowledge is power. Remember, learning. That's important.
This is my greatest fear. When I go to metaphysical fairs, I'm always so afraid I'm going to sit with someone who's like, just so you know, you're this close to just losing it on somebody. And they're like, oh God, they can see inside my brain.
Oh. So from a quick Google search.
Deepest research, yes.
Deepest research ever. Definitely not Reddit threads. INTJs are the most common to be terroristic or school shooters. And the most serial killers are ESTPs.
Oh, interesting.
See, I don't know. Jenny, what are you?
I'm an ENFP.
I'm an INFJ.
What are you, Holly?
Well, it depends on when I take the test. I'm either an ENFJ or an INFJ.
Oh,
like it
Yeah.
literally, every time I take it, it adjusts. I think it just depends on like how I'm feeling.
Yeah, my F and my J and my P, INFJ. Yeah, my J and my P switch.
Mm-hmm. I've been the same since I was 16. So
Look at you.
I don't know if that's a good thing. It means I'm still a dumbass teenager.
I just went to this leadership training and they were talking about how the old school of thought for psychology was that these traits, like psychological traits that you have, essentially like extroversion, the way that you deal with conflict, all of that stuff. The old school of thought is that is set by the time you're 25. Like by 25, whatever you are, however you handle that, you are for the rest of your life. But then Harvard did a whole study on it that found that, guess what? We have the opportunity to change those personality traits. If we put a focus on it, we can actually change it, which is really interesting to think that you can change from introvert to extrovert without masking. Like it can just become a focus.
Like you can focus and train yourself. So serial killers out there who might be listening, remember, there's hope. You too can change. You don't have to do this.
Manifest something better.
Yeah,
something better.
Oh, the most common Enneagram or the most likely is 4 or 8.
Well, that's of course because it's all the 8 holes. For anybody who's ever done an Enneagram, you know exactly what that means, 8 holes.
I'm a 6, by the way.
I'm a 9.
Nice. We weigh each other. Or we like balance each other.
I'm a 7.
Are you? I have a 7 wing.
I don't remember what that is, but I'm real excited about it. I'm going to look into it. So guys, listeners, I think for today, hopefully what you've taken from this are maybe all of the ways you could be a serial killer. And the fact that you're not is a moment of celebration for you today. Because what you've heard are all of the things, these lessons, these things that horrible people have done, but habits that they have curated. And just because you are curating those same habits, or perhaps have some of these same traits or birthdays or Enneagram or any of these things, the fact that you're not burying bodies means, guess what? This is going to be a good day, everybody. It's going to be a good day. And remember, no matter how weird it gets out there, we're all fine. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today. You are just a font of knowledge.
Oh, well, I talk a lot, but thanks.
Oh, God, I love that you just have all of this stored up there. We would love to have you on again sometime to discuss more of all of your criminology amazingness.
Yes.
So, yeah, please come visit us again sometime.
Totally.
And for listeners, if you have not already, check us out on our Facebook page. We've got some different questions on there for you. We would love to hear more about you. So come check that out. You can find us on all of the socials, or email us some of your thoughts about today's episode at where'llfindpodcast@gmail.com. Almost messed that up. Carly, as always, it's great to see you.
Oh, it was so good to see you. So fun. I feel like I got smarter today. I like that.
Same. All right, well, thanks, friends.
It's from doing your homework.
We love you. Bye.
Bye.